Hey, it's me, Vivian, and this after the show is a little bit different than our other ones because it's just me, and it didn't happen actually right after the show. Rebecca and I recorded the Power episode yesterday, and I mentioned in that episode that I had notes on what we were going to talk about, and it this morning I actually started to. Well, I'll just be honest. I found my notes and they were in my meditation room, and I thought it would be interesting for you to know how I guess, arrive at the episodes. We pick a few words and then we only release every other week, so we kind of take our time and sit with that. And each of us individually reflects on what that word means to us, what we'd like to share with you, and then move through our daily living looking for inspiration and insight. And for me, very frankly, both in prayer and in meditation, kind of bring you to mind and then that word and see what comes up. And that's what ends up happening in our conversations with each other. She shares her end, I share mine, and that conversation, sort of stirs everything up to hopefully pique your curiosity and help you to also explore that term. Because I found my notes and they were here, I'm actually sitting in my meditation room, so the audio might sound a bit different. Hopefully you can hear the birds outside as the sun is starting to peek through, and I have a water feature in the room, which just brings me serenity. So I've got my notes, and I thought I'd share with you what I had written down over the last few weeks. And I think that the main thing that I tried to convey in yesterday's show is that my idea of power is actually what I think most people think power is. And for me, it's weakness. We allow our strength and ourselves power through courage. And we really do that, in my opinion, when we feel, when we're vulnerable. When we move through the melody of our lives, when we see it as a symphony rather than as an individual instrument. And I wrote down a note that I probably read from Mark Neppo. Yeah. It says, weakness in spiritual terms as any habit of mind or heart that prevents us from seeing things exactly as they are or in their entirety, or with our entire capacity to feel. So if that is weakness, then the opposite of weakness is in the power of feeling, in the power of awareness, whether instead of a habit, and in the power of seeing reality as it is, instead of how we want it to be. Let me see. I also wrote down that power is in our awareness. Well, that's what I was just talking about. In wisdom and in love. Those are two of my favorite words, wisdom and love. Wisdom because we're discerning a choice, and love because it is the word that describes living. It is the word that describes unity and oneness and forgiveness and compassion, and it's just kind of my favorite word. So on the back of this note, it says, my story of power is in facing my own darkness. So, all of this stuff is just my opinion, and you shouldn't believe me. You should test it. You should try it. You should experiment with it. And the reason I think that I wrote these words down is because I found my power when I stopped running away from my weaknesses. When I actually began to turn towards them and stand tall When I moved away the distraction and the noise of the world, and for me, it could be different for you, but for me, that was honestly work. I went up the whole ladder of partnership building, and at the top I saw, I started with one-on-one, then community, then regional, then national, and then finally I worked on an effort building an international partnership. And that's when I finally stopped climbing, because for me there wasn't anything beyond that. And then I just got on a different ladder. It was the same thing with my dissertation. I like ladders. I achieved that terminal degree because it was the logical next step. I used to do it with exercise, and a few years ago I actually ran a marathon. I wouldn't actually call it running, but I completed a marathon, and it was also a distraction. And at the time, I really wasn't in a place where I could believe that or see that, but the effort was really a distraction from what I needed to face and live right then. So now, instead of just going up the ladder and then finding another ladder, I actually still go up ladders because that's kind of what I do. I like climbing up. But I climb up in growth and learning. And then as I take that growth and learning, then I drop back in. And that's really the entire intention of this whole effort. I turn that effort inward and I reflect on it. So I go back to the beginning, not as jumping off a ladder to get another one, but in moving up that learning curve and then letting it naturally fall. Like in Germany, we used to take walks when the boys were young, and there were fields of wheat. And I would see the fields of wheat grow up, and corn stalks too. They would grow up, and then as they got heavy and tall, they would fall naturally down. And I see that that's kind of the shift that's happened in my life. Rather than just this achieving and this striving and this acquiring to the next step and the next step and the next step, I still have a forward direction, an upward movement, stepping up into that staircase. But then I naturally let that fall when it's ready to reflect and then move back. Let's see. So the last note that I have is, these are just kind of scribbles. I think throughout my life I've had flashes of reality. I know that I don't see things as they are all the time because I'm just a human being and we have, human tendencies. But what I think I was trying to say in this note is that those flashes of reality, those flashes of what is real, I have found in love. I found that reality and that truth in forgiveness. And I have found it in moments that were just pure joy. There aren't even a handful of them, but I remember them as much as I can and bring them to mind so that I can. It's almost like recalling the taste of your favorite ice cream. And so I recall the taste of joy, the taste of just that whole fulfillment. And throughout this podcast, I've told you, reflections and stories about moments that's happened. But that's it. I just felt that it was an after the show moment, even though it didn't happen after the show between Rebecca and I. It really is a more intimate conversation between myself and you. And, shining a little light on how we come to our talks and what we do before our talks to get there. And it's kind of a weird way to prepare, very different than I have prepared for anything professionally in my life before. But it feels true and right for me. And I hope that it shines a light for you and it illuminates a different perspective or shines a light on the path that you're going on. So I very, very, very much have enjoyed bringing you into my private space, and I am very grateful that we have the opportunity to be in your ear and to talk to you and to form a community. So, questions, topics, anything, let us know. Thanks.